We're going to move into the distribution systems. We're not going to get very technical here, but in this multivariate approach, we started out with a source, learn a little bit more about it. That's going to help you. The more you know your risks, the better you're going to be able to identify things and problems before they happen. You look at your disinfection. That's the next step in the multivariate. Are you doing things the right way? Do you have the right amount of training to disinfect this properly? Do you do those daily checks to make sure you're adding the right amount of chlorine? Are you keeping people safe? Once things leave the pump house, and we've already talked about it a little bit, goes out into the system. Now this is your last barrier. It's going to make its way to people. How do you keep it safe before it gets to the consumer? And a big part about it, a lot of communities with the boil water advisory that are small communities, they have a very limited amount of capacity when it comes to their distribution system. A lot of them are familiar with it because they're out fixing breaks nightly. They're out in the middle of winter trying to deal with a break. They've known there's been times when there's been a little low flow. There's different things that have come up over time. But many systems don't have a set of drawings. They could probably tell you generally that there's a house, the pipe goes about 1 kilometer that way to this person's residence. But they've never marked out where the system goes. They don't realize that, okay, your system leaves the pump house and branches left and right. You've only ever taken samples on the left side. What about the right side? What's happening? So the more that a community can kind of even open up Google Earth, try to sketch out the system location, or try to dig up old drawings. A lot of times they're tucked away in a location in a pump house. Maybe an operator wasn't around when those drawings were made, but getting the operator to go out to try to dig up those drawings, approaching municipal affairs to say, do you have some drawings? I'm trying to know more about my system. Because that's going to go a long way in that asset management part that Deneen talked about earlier. If you're going to manage a distribution system, you've got to know what kind of pipes you have in the ground, how old are they, what size are they. It's going to go a long way in knowing, okay, when are things going to start breaking? Or why is it that all the pipes on that side of town are failing? You're dealing with things over and over again, but you don't really know why. So you want to build up that capacity, go get a map together, try to sketch out where problem areas are. And again, we talked about it earlier, a lot of communities don't know how much water they use. They have a general idea that maybe we've had low flow periods and flow goes up in the summertime because people come in as seasonal residencies increase. Or maybe in the winter everyone leaves and flow must be lower. But they've never taken a measurement to know how much flow there is. Without that measurement, you can't really tell how you're supposed to disinfect properly. So we're back to YouTube, where you can go online and you can watch, it's about a 10-minute video that just talks about the flow meter. So the flow meter is your way of just seeing how much water moves through a system in a day. They can be pretty simple. In a lot of small communities, for a few $1,000s, there's an opportunity to have something mounted to the distribution system that they'll be able to check on a daily basis to go in and say, we used that much water today, and what was that like last week? That's your chance then to find out, all of a sudden you're using way more water than usual. Maybe you've got a break without a flow meter, which sounds basic. And of course you'd have a flow meter. In some communities you'd have that perspective. There's a lot of communities that don't have a flow meter. So building up that capacity again. And we talked about chlorine, where there can be a really big benefit of flushing. So when you're flushing, your main goal is to fulfill your permit to operate, where you're supposed to flush at least once a year. A lot of communities do it in fall and spring, and you're trying to clean out that system. That's your opportunity to kind of get water moving through, kind of remove some of the biofilm that's going to build up. If you're not flushing as a community, you're going to want to pursue that idea a bit further. You're going out to try to flush in areas or get flushing capabilities installed in locations where you've got dead ends, low flow. Maybe there's a part of the community where one person lives at the end of a really long line, and that's an elderly person who doesn't use very much water, so they never get the right amount of chlorine. So how do you get that water cycling through? How do you get that person the right amount of safety? Maybe you want to introduce a flushing opportunity in that area. You're going to have it in large diameter mains where maybe infrastructure was installed a long time ago. It's not so appropriate for a smaller community, a community that's shrunk a bit. So you got to get water moving through. Again, another opportunity. You can have a night where you just sit down with the family, watch some YouTube videos. You maybe aren't going to do that with your family. My kids might watch it. Yeah, so go online. You can learn a bit about flushing. But there's something to consider. The process of flushing isn't really all that challenging. Cracking open a hydrant or getting the right kind of technology that lets you as an operator not have to go out as much to flush. But you have to have a plan. So you can't just say, I've never flushed before. We should start. Let's go out. We'll open things up and see if we can make things better. But in reality, you kind of got to go through a process. Figure out, okay, I learned a bit more about my source and how much water I can provide. If I flush, maybe I'm going to introduce some problems. Or maybe you've got aging infrastructure. Got a lot of these pipes that were put in during periods of growth. They've been in the ground for 30, 40 years. If you tried to flush in that scenario, you might have pipe collapses, negative pressure might build up. You might attempt to make things better, but you might open a whole other part of the problem. So you really should reach out. So I encourage any community to go online and learn a bit more through YouTube. See that flushing is something that's useful, but have a plan. And again, that distribution system page of the boil water assessment tool has some of that. It asks the community, do you know what size your pipes are? Do you know how much water you use? Are you flushing? Those little things that eventually you hope a community will build up capacity. Well, they'll say, yeah, we flush, of course we do. I know where all my pipes are. I've got a plan. I'm going to try to invest in these pipes because they're the old ones. The more that a community feels comfortable with that part of their system, the more resilient they're going to be if any problems were to occur.